Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis for another episode. Today, we are talking about the power of habits and building daily momentum for a big life. Robin Lewis, how are you today, sir?
Hey, doing great, Neal. It's always a pleasure getting together with you, man. And hopefully we're adding value to our listeners, right? That's what it's all about. So I'm excited to be here.
So this big life that we're chasing after, this big life journey that we're on, this marathon, not a sprint. So today's episode, we're talking about building momentum for a big life. This is not a thing that happens overnight. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, right on. And I think it's so good to emphasize that, because that's the reality. I don't know of anybody that's gone through, living into their potential without going through a process. It's a process. There's a quote that says it doesn't happen in a day, but it happens daily, right? And so our daily habits actually is what come together. It's like the magic of compound interest, right? It's a good comparison, right? If somebody invests, and I don't have the exact numbers now, Neal, maybe you do, but I think it's a great way to sort of shape this, is that if we invest $100 today at 20 years old, that $100 30 years from now is worth a whole lot more. And it's because of the compounding effect that 100 becomes 150 and becomes 200 and 300 and 500 and 1,000. Or another good example is if you start with a penny, and I don't have the number, maybe we should look it up real quick. If you start with a penny and you double that every day, in 30 days, by the time you get to 30 days, you're in the millions.
You got a whole lot. You're okay. You don't have to worry about much if you double it every day for 30 days. You're correct, sir.
Yeah. So that's the idea of so it's a process. It's a long journey. It's a journey.
So we've already said some dirty 4-letter words that maybe the audience doesn't want to hear, but maybe that we don't even always have a lovely relationship with. That's momentum, habits, daily, and then the implied part is consistency. So we're going to be talking about all of that nasty stuff that we need, that's necessary, so that we can build momentum and have this big life. You ready, sir?
Yes, sir. A great subject, and I agree.
So let's jump in. The whole idea of momentum, right? And we know that you mentioned it doesn't happen in a day, but it happens daily. Let's just start right there. The idea of doing the right thing daily, because all of us are doing things daily right now. Some of them are serving us. Some of them are hindering us on our journey towards the big life. How important is it to master and to be intentional about those daily habits, those daily practices? Because many of us, we don't even recognize them as habits, right? We don't think of the time that we wake up as a habit. We don't think of the way that we, the energy that we have or the words that we say to ourselves as habits. How important are those daily activities, those daily practices and habits to building momentum to having this big life that we're striving for?
It's so important, Neal, and I want to just give full disclosure to our listeners right up front that there's some areas of my life where I'm doing really good at this, but there are some areas where I still struggle.
Yeah,
there are areas I think it was this morning I noted to myself that I allow distractions to get in the way. right? So the more intentional we are, the more focused we are about making sure that we're doing the right things, is the better that we're going to do. And there's some areas of my life that I have to get better at that. I'm just being, what's the word, Neil? It's transparent.
So you're being transparent, being vulnerable, sir. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. I shared with you, just getting before we got on this call, that there I feel challenged right now to get back to budgeting, right?
All right, there's another four-letter word. Now that's a challenge for so many of us. And so you're going to go there, but just the habit of budgeting. We think we know, we think we have an idea. I mean, we're doing okay. We're saving money. We're spending less than we make, but that is a habit and a challenge. Keep going, brother.
Yeah, so that's an example where yes, I'm spending less than I make, but when I stop, and I actually took some time this morning to start looking at that. When I stop, benefit of really using a budget and living on a budget is that you can give yourself a whole lot more room, and
Yes,
you can be
sir.
aware of some things that maybe just easily are happening without you even realizing it, right? And but I got away from that habit. I'm just being transparent with you folks. So as I share this with you, there's some areas where what we're talking about I'm doing really well with, but there's some areas that I'm not. And I think what I want to share, Neil, just up front, is that it makes all the difference. So what you're presenting to our audience today makes all the difference in terms of living into our big life, in whatever area of our lives that might apply. Another area that I've gotten a little bit away from it, Neil, is the habit of eating healthy.
Come on, hey, wait, stop. What you're not going to do is start pointing the finger at Neal Oates, okay? So you need to mind your business, sir. Go ahead.
Now
Come
you're
on.
doing well, man. I'm sure. But and I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but I'm just sharing with our audience that I don't have this all together. And so we're learning together as we share with you here today. Hopefully, I can take something away from this lesson and apply it to my life right now, right? So that's
So this whole idea of these small changes making a big difference,
yes,
the idea of how we build momentum. There was a point in time where I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I became aware of where my habits had gotten me, right? So many of us, when we hear the word habit, we want to believe we have good habits, positive activities that are moving us forward. There are some negative habits that we must address. And one of mine, being from the South, meaning Alabama, not Florida, I loved Dr. Pepper and root beer, dark soda. I would drink a 2 liter like it was a 12-ounce can. That's so, and that's nothing but poison in a bottle. And so I made a conscious decision. Well, first, I was aware of my current situation. And I said, whoa, I mean, I was chunky bear. And so I was like, man, how did I get here? And I was like, man, it's going to be too hard for me to get back to where I was or where I want to be. Let me just do one thing. And I communicated with my wife. I said, wife, no dark soda comes into the house, right? We could have ginger ale, Sprite, and I wouldn't touch it. But the dark soda, it would just call me like the sirens did for Homer and Odysseus, right? And so for me, no dark soda. I stopped drinking soda, and miraculously, that one habit resulted in me losing almost 35 pounds. Right. And so I think it's important for us as we are having this conversation, as you're listening, to think you're probably one consistent habit away from a massive change. Now, it might not be a 30+ pound change, but it might be saying good morning or I love you to someone consistently might change the whole interaction or the dynamic of that relationship. So I will tell you, when I am hanging out with my son or we're going and doing something, I always said, I want to make sure that he's a young man. And so I would sit in my car and let him get in the car on his own and do all this. And I'm thinking, all right, no big deal. But then I said, I want to improve our relationship. What's one thing that I can do so that as my son is growing up as a 16-year-old now, he knows that he's independent, but knows that his dad is right there with him. And so immediately before I get in the car, I would always wait for him to come to the car, because you know how we usually are. Hurry up, let's go, son. Come on, hurry up. I don't care how fast he is. He's never fast enough for dad, right? Come on, hurry up. We got to be there. I would wait, and we have our handshake. We would do our handshake before we get in the car. And what I found, that one thing, not rushing him and waiting on him to get in the car, making him feel like he's late or tardy, but waiting for him, handshaking, saying I love you, and then getting in the car, even though we just said it in the house. Our entire ride, whether it was a 5-minute ride or a 2-hour ride, the entire experience while we were in the vehicle changed. The conversation we had changed. He's sitting there. Hey, Dad, I haven't told you this, but here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on this? As opposed to sitting in the passenger seat and going to sleep, right? And so one little habit can make a major difference in everything that we do. What else you got for us, Robin? Anything there?
That's such a good example, and because that's applicable to just about anything that we're trying to do, is to recognize that we can just change one thing. And if we change that one thing, that can lead to, it might not be the only thing that might need to change for us to get to exactly the pinnacle, right? To where we want to go. Right. But the fact is that we can change that one thing. And changing that one thing can make a huge difference. So I think it's a great example, which is applicable like in eating, right? You mentioned the soda. One of the things that I can do is just not have the stuff here, right? You just don't
avoid, not resist. Avoid, not resist. You're right, sir. Come on.
So, if you're in order, I love what you said about the fact that if the soda is in, okay, no more dark soda in the house, because if it's here, guess what? I'm going to have some. And so that's, I think, just a great example about forming those kind of habits. Is also making it easier for ourselves by not even having it around. Yeah.
So Robin, I want to get into this idea of, okay, I'm going to install a new habit today. And I expect to see results a week from today, right? Otherwise, it was the wrong habit. I didn't do it hard enough, or I need to jump to something else. In your life, what have you seen, or what have you come to apply when it comes to the idea of putting these habits in place and that consistency piece over a sustained period of time?
I think it's so important, and I think it's a good point to bring up. I'd like to use examples. We're all, you and I are driving age. I'm assuming that most of our listeners are driving age, right? They're driving. You might even be driving while listening to this right now. If you can think back to when you first started driving, so you were a teenager, more than likely, and you were holding the steering wheel with both hands, right? You were checking the rear view mirror all the time. You were looking at the side view mirror. Do I step on the brakes? Do I step on the gas? You're thinking about everything that you're doing. Do I put on my indicator? Did I put on my indicator? Did I put it on the right side? There's just so much that's going on when you think about when we are first driving, right? I'll never forget the time when I was driving with my dad back as a teenager, and I was coming up to a major road, I should say, coming from a side road, and I went too far into the road. Man, he nearly had a heart attack. He did not like that because, his life was on the line. The car was on the line. Other people's life was on the line, right? And you translate that now, folks that are listening to us, that you're driving right now. The chances are that if you're driving, you're not even thinking about. You're not using both hands. You probably got one hand. You might even be using your knee to turn that steering wheel right now, right? And you don't have to worry about turning on that indicator. Have you ever been somewhere where you have arrived and you've wondered, I don't even remember how I got here? because your mind was just somewhere else. I think the reason that I share that example, Neil, is because I think that's the benefit of habits. See, we've driven enough till we get to the point now where we don't even have to think about it. It just happens automatically. And so there are some habits that we already have in our lives. And so the key is actually to create habits one at a time to get to where we want to go. Talking about living in the big life, right? And so I would say that it's going to take a whole lot more than a week to get to that place where you can now do that thing, whatever it might be, without even thinking about it. And so that's the challenge of, I think, developing habits, is that it's going to take doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again, and over and over and over and over again, until it gets to that point where it just becomes automatic. And I think it's going to take a whole lot more than a week for that to happen. And I would encourage you to move through that.
You just mentioned something about instilling these habits one at a time, right? I think that many of us, we take on too much too quickly, and then there's that sense of overwhelm. So just break down that idea of, because we all want, dude, we want our momentum to be, we want it to be through the roof. We want to live the big life. We want to hear about it today and experience the big life yesterday, right? We don't even want to wait till tomorrow. We're like, oh, I heard about it. Yeah, I'm there already. But you're talking about these small incremental, one at a time habit formations, installations. Like, why are you, right? Because we're sitting here saying, Robin, but you're so far along. Don't tell me you did this one step at a time, because I want it now. I want it instantaneously. Tell me why you believe in that, installing one habit, making sure that it's locked in. Why do you believe in that so much?
It's such a good question. And I think it's because I have erred on trying to do too much. So
there we go.
We talked about the fact that we want to get it. The benefit of a habit, I want to state it again, is to, whatever that thing is that you're doing, to get it to that place where it becomes automatic, kind of like our driving, right? You're brushing our teeth. We don't have to think about that anymore, right? Putting on our socks and our shoes, we don't have to think about that anymore, or whatever it might be. Stockings if you're a lady, right? But the point is, putting on makeup, shaving, we don't have to think about those things anymore. Those things have become habits. And if that takes a while, I've heard reference, and I think I tend to buy into this one, that it takes 66 days to truly create a habit. To get it to that place of doing it every day for 66 days, to get it to that place where it becomes a true habit, where we can now do it without even thinking about it. And that alone is hard, man.
66 days is not sexy, Robin. 21 days, 7 days is sexy. 66 is discouraging to most people.
Yeah, exactly. And so can we try to do more than one of those at a time? So that's the idea. That's the idea of, doing one at a time. There's a book that I actually read that shared that concept, which I think is a great book to consider. It's The One Thing. It's by Gary Keller. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Neil?
Absolutely. Mandatory reading for those of us in the real estate industry, those of us who were part of the KW brand, or if you just wanted to build something with foundational principles and ideas. The One Thing. Yes, sir.
And the concept there is that we manage our lives by priority. And so we have various priorities that we have in our lives, and we want to manage. I was reading a book this morning, and it talked about living to the yeses in our life, right? So it's encouraging. It was encouraging me to learn to say no. And the way that I can learn to say no is to clarify the yeses. So it's about the priorities. So you're figuring out what those priorities are, and then figuring out the habits that we need to create in order to honor those priorities. And then attacking that one by one. I think that's kind of the concept of that book. It's a great book. It's a great resource for those of you who might want to consider getting that. But what we're sharing from you here is this concept of identifying a habit that you want to create and then attacking that habit. Hey, you might be better than me and you can do 2 or 3 at a time. More power to you. I don't think there's any science that says you can't, right? And
Right.
I'm just speaking from my capacity. Is that, like, a lot of times when I'm trying to do too much, what tends to happen is I let it fall. I let it slip by, and I don't do it again. The thing that I want to do, and then I have to kind of start all over again.
So you've mentioned a few times. So as we're talking about building this momentum for the big life, you've mentioned a word called reading. You've mentioned this word called a book
Yeah.
numerous times. Not in this episode, but every episode that we've done, you have referred to a book. We are bookies, right? Not now. We're not trying to take your money, not that type of bookie, but when it comes to getting information. And so I want to move to identifying some of those high impact habits. And I believe that reading, learning, educating yourself is part of or one of those high impact habits when it comes to personal growth, creating the momentum. What are your thoughts on the need? Like, we hear all these catchy phrases. Leaders are readers, right? If you want to succeed, you must learn to read. All of this stuff. So, what are your thoughts on using or making reading? And I know this is not sexy in our time because we've got audiobooks, we've got podcasts like people are watching and listening to now, but at least getting information. We're going to call receiving or seeking information, we're going to call that reading. What are your thoughts on the value and the importance of having a good reading habit to growing and improving your life?
Invaluable. I think I've talked about this before, Neil, but the only guarantee that tomorrow will get better is today's growth.
Yep.
And developing the habit of reading, learning. We on our previous one of our previous episodes, we talked about this idea of serving others. If you remember, we talked about this concept of adding value to people, and we have to value people, and we have to get to know and understand what they value. And then the third one is we have to make ourselves more valuable.
More valuable. Yes, sir.
Because we can't give what we don't have. And it's interesting. We shouldn't. This is a subject because you and I are readers now. We don't read because it's a chore. We read because we learn, we grow. It impacts our life.
Now, hold on, Robin. I'm going to interrupt you here.
We're able to help others.
And so here's what I want to just interrupt Robin Lewis with is tell them reading is also a shortcut for us, right? Meaning that we get to learn and glean from those who have done it better and worse than we have. So as we're learning through others' experiences. And I don't think there's anything as valuable to learn a lesson from someone else's experience, right? And then I attempt the same thing and see, okay, did I do better or worse? Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The other one that I would say to add to that, there's two that I would say to add to that. One is thinking. I think a daily thinking, and there's different
That's
variations,
scary.
right? Yeah, we don't, folks. I don't know. This thinking is not easy, right? It's hard. If you pause for a moment and just think about it, how much time do we actually spend thinking? We might think that we do, but oftentimes, I heard somebody say this, and I realize it to be true, Neil, is that we are just kind of going through the same thoughts that we have, that we're just kind of putting them over and over again in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And so that's also now on automatic. And so I think forcing ourselves to think, I don't know, it might not be fair with the time that we have. We'll probably need to come back on another episode and talk about thinking. But this habit of thinking is this daily habit of thinking. Let me just say one action that we can take in regards to thinking that if we do this on a daily basis, it can change our lives if we don't have the habit already. And that is reflecting on our day. Just thinking about what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can I do differently next time. Just start there. There are other considerations, but what went well today or yesterday, depending upon when you decide you're going to do this. You can do this at the end of your day, or you can do this the first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. What went well today or yesterday? What didn't go so well? What can I do differently? That habit, Neal, come on now. The experience is not the best teacher.
Right.
Evaluated experience is.
And so on that, Robin, this is exactly what you're saying. I am reviewing, evaluating my experiences, and then I'm going back and I am putting mine in a journal. So I'm not just reviewing my day, evaluating my day. I'm journaling so that I can go back and review weekly. I can review quarterly what my experience has been, and then I can adjust accordingly. Right. And so I think that's so important, the idea of thinking and then evaluating, looking back, seeing how the day went, how the week, month, quarter went. So fantastic stuff. Keep going, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm just stating a couple of habits that I think that are invaluable habits that we can do on a daily basis. So you share some of yours. I like the idea of not just doing it, but putting it in a journal. So you do.
Yeah, so
journal, like how often do you journal? Tell the listeners about.
So I am a habitual journaler. I journal every evening. So I'm journaling every evening just to reevaluate, to assess what my day looked like, and then I'm reviewing those entries. So this is not a diary. It might be 3 sentences some days. It might be a full page other days, but it's never going more than 10 minutes, right? So I'm just going to do a maximum of 10 minutes to do a recap. What went well? What did not go well? What can we adjust? What are my expectations? And then part of my evaluation and my journaling is, what am I setting myself up for tomorrow, this week, or this month? And so that's how my journaling process works. And what I found is that once I get it out of here, and you talk about the idea or the habit of thinking, once I get it out of here and I get it on paper, I get to gauge when I do my review, what's my thought pattern? What are my habitual thoughts? Are they serving me or not? Because what we tend to see and what studies have shown is that we tend to think that we're doing much better than we really are. All of us are great salespeople. We sell ourselves on the lies or the stories that we tell ourselves that might not be the truth. Once I come in and I write that down, so that's a big part of one of my habits for personal growth, and that has a high impact. And my next one is going to be daily exercise, right? In some type of way, wife and I, we have to move our bodies. We've got to do something strenuous. And we like to do that in the morning, really before the world comes beating on our door. So we try to be early risers. Our morning routine and our evening routines are pretty much what we would call our book ends. We make sure we win the morning, we win the evening by journaling and setting up for the next day. And that way, when life happens in between, we're okay, right? So those are my big ones. Making sure that I journal in the evening, we exercise in the morning, we do our devos, have our coffee, stretch, exercise together. And then in the evening, we wind down that process a bit. And then, because we know that everything breaks loose in the middle. But if we start strong, finish strong daily, every day, 5 days of the business of the work week, we're going to win. So those are some fantastic habits, and keeping dark soda out of the house. Great habits.
That's awesome. And the way that you shared that, I can tell you don't have to think about that anymore, right?
Nope.
That's your routine.
Yes, sir.
And so here's as we wind this one down, I think it's important. The importance of this, Neal, tell me if you agree, is that we understand we already have some habits, right? You have your day. Our listeners, you have your day. I have my day, right? Have things that I habitually do. And what we're the benefit here, we talked about momentum, we're talking about using this to live the big life, is to recognize that if we keep doing what we're always doing, we're going to keep getting the results that we've always gotten. And so think about what habit that you can change to help you to get to where it is that you want to go. What habit can you change? And then take a step out, start doing it, and recognize it's going to take a little while for it to actually happen. Get somebody around you to maybe help you with it. But, the idea is the only way it's going to change is to make a change, right? And that's not going to be easy, but that's what's needed. And the more that we can recognize that and then change those habits and build them up, and all of us can do it. All of us have areas in our lives where we're happy with the habits that we have formed. They're very healthy habits. It's a healthy habit to brush our teeth on a daily basis, right? And so on. We already have healthy habits and we don't think about it anymore. And what we want to do now is to change one habit at a time that's going to help us to move in the direction of our potential, to move in the direction of living the big life, meeting that goal, making a difference, increasing our performance, speaking in public, whatever the case might be.
Good stuff. Robin Lewis, Neal Oates Jr. here.
Yes,
Ladies
sir.
and gentlemen, it has been another fantastic episode. Thank you all for hanging out with us as we talked about all of that dirty, nasty, necessary stuff. Momentum, daily habits, consistency, accountability, right? So we want to just say from the bottom of our hearts that we appreciate you all hanging out with us. Important that you all make sure you share with us your thoughts. Comment on this episode on whatever platform you are listening. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you're here as we continue this journey towards the big life that all of us have as a potential reality. But most importantly, we always ask you to share this with someone you believe this episode, this podcast would be valuable to, someone whose life would be better as a result of listening, tapping into what we have to say. And Robin and I want to just let you know, as we do at the end of every episode, that we love you. God loves you. There's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time you see us or we see you, we're right there with you. Take care.